an active role model. You've done something that few others have done, okay? Then the more visible you make yourself to show that you've done something that few others have done, you've done something that people probably thought were not possible, and you make it easier for others to go down that path.
Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. My name is Dirk-Jan Hupkes, and on this podcast I give the women who work in tech the platform they need to inspire and empower each other. Join me on a journey into the world of entrepreneurship, funding, biases and role models to discover the strategies for success in the tech industry. In other words, how women can disrupt tech. Are you ready to listen? Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech. This is the podcast that is rewriting the narrative of women in tech. I'm your host, Dirk-Jan Hupkes, and I'm on a mission to make DEI in tech a non-issue by the end of 2032. By then, diversity, equity, and inclusion in tech will be so abundant that it's considered normal. So a while back, I asked listeners to tell me what kind of stories they want to hear. And there was one particular response that triggered me in a positive way. I'd like to learn of women who used to play with dolls but ended up in tech. That response came from Sara Leggese. And when I learned about her story and that she's also a role model at Roll It Out, it was easy to invite her onto the show. In this episode of Women Disrupting Tech, Sara and I talk about how she discovered tech without any early exposure, the role of mindset in breaking barriers, and why visibility matters for women in tech. We also dive into why having a technical background can be a game changer for project managers in tech, and what drives Sara to be an advocate for gender equality in tech. So when you're ready to listen and learn why you should never exclude opportunities because of your gender, please welcome to Women Disrupting Tech, Sara Leggese. Hey, good morning, Sara. Good to have you. Question I always ask at the start is how you got into your current job or current position, and floor is yours.
Well, good morning, Dirk-Jan. First of all, thanks for having me on the podcast here. How did I get into my current job? Well, it's been a long way. I've worked in semiconductors for almost 35 years. It started right after university. I got my master's in electronic engineering and did my dissertation at Ericsson Microelectronics in Stockholm, working in the design department. So this sort of was a part of the curriculum, the microelectronics curriculum that I majored in at university. And once I started at Ericsson, I finished my dissertation. I started working there in their CMOS fab with process engineering. And that's where I started to get an idea of what semiconductors was all about. It was quite fascinating working, producing chips. Looking in the microscope, looking at these small chips full of millions of transistors, and realizing that this is what it's all about, electronics. And that was 35 years ago, and I'm still in semiconductors, maybe in a different role, but still within semiconductors. The process engineering part, working really hands-on in the fab, producing chips, I did for about 10, 12 years. After that, I took a step out and I went into product engineering. Product engineering, at that time, I had already moved to Holland. And had started working at Philips Semiconductors here in Nijmegen. So, yeah, I did some process engineering work there. I went into product engineering. And then at a certain point in time, I wanted to take even another step back from the real technical work and go into project management because I really enjoyed looking at the complete process of development of chips, running, validation. You get your prototypes, validation, and then bringing them into production. So you
Hmm.
see the whole flow there,
Yeah.
but still within semiconductors. And that's where I've been for the past 35 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you zoomed out twice.
I zoomed out twice, and I probably zoomed out one more time in the last 2 years because I was working as a project manager
Huh?
for about 15 years. And at one point, I was wondering, what do I want to do next? And it was a little bit of a dilemma. Do I want to go further into project management and program management, for example?
Hmm.
But on the other hand, I enjoyed working with people. And I think that very late in my career,
Yeah.
and then I'm talking about in the last 5 years, I realized and actually dared to say out loud, I work good with people. I enjoy working with people. I communicate well with people. And I then decided, instead of going further into project management or program management, I take a step back and I want to go into people management. And that is exactly where I am today. So 2 years ago, I got the opportunity to lead a team at Nexperia, where I am today, back
Yeah.
in Nijmegen. A team of project managers doing exactly what I have been doing for the last 15 years. So when it came to a choice of um, growing into a people management role,
Hmm.
I had how should I say, I had some requirements. So I wanted it to be in an area where I had experience. So it would either have been some sort of engineering manager role within semiconductors or project management, leading a team of managers,
Hmm.
both within semiconductors. So, when looking for a new job at that point in time, you narrow down the opportunities when you have a lot of requirements like that.
Yeah.
So, but I did back then have a third requirement, and that was that I wanted to be closer to home because at that point in time, I'd been traveling 5 years to Eindhoven from Nijmegen, and I I felt that I needed to come back closer to home. So I got this really good opportunity here in Nijmegen. So it is, what is it? It's 10 minutes to drive and 20 minutes to bike when I bike. I don't do that too often, but there is always that possibility.
Yeah, at least, but it's close to home for
It's
sure.
close to
Yeah,
home, exactly.
especially for by Dutch standards, I think it's close to home.
Yes, yes.
If you can bike to the office, I don't hear a lot of people doing that these days. Well, actually my the neighbor at where I work, the guy who lives next door, he does bike to the office.
Yeah. Well, everything has to be good. It has to be really good weather, and
Yeah, yeah,
it's
it's
not every
not.
day that we have that here.
No, no. That's one certainty. Yesterday I was going for a workout and I got hailed out, literally. So I had to take shelter underneath a bridge to for the and wait for the hail to
Mhm.
subside.
Mhm.
Anyways, I wanted to go back a bit in time because this episode and this conversation starts with a remark that you made on LinkedIn, where
Mhm.
you basically said, "So I'm curious how many women who end up working in tech actually played with dolls." So I was wondering, you're the daughter of I think a diplomat, and your mother was a medical secretary, right?
Mhm. Correct.
How did your parents influence your decision to go into tech?
Well, directly, they did not.
Mm-hmm.
But indirectly, I would say that my parents influenced me in the sense that they never put any restrictions on me as to what I can do or cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that mindset, you feel that, well, anything is possible. You
Mm-hmm.
don't exclude certain professions because of your gender or your religion or your culture or something like that. So, I mean, this is the way I grew up. Like I said, or like you said, he was a diplomat. My mom was a medical secretary. So, growing up, I moved around from country to country, living in 6 different countries by the time I was 18. There was not much tech that I got from any of my parents
Mm-hmm.
or my sister or from my surroundings because it was really, I played with my friends. I played with Barbies. I cooked with my mom. I sewed with my mom. Carpentry with my dad. There no tech really there.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow I did end up in tech. Probably because I was never, nobody ever told me you can't go into tech,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So, I mean, it's like, well, why not? I was
How did that happen?
How did that happen? Pure chance, I think.
Uh-huh.
So at that point in time, I was living in Ghana and I did my last 2 years of high school there at a school called Ghana International School. I was good at maths, I was pretty good at physics, chemistry, I
Mm-hmm.
was good at languages. And the last year of school, 12th grade, a lot of my friends, international friends,
Mm-hmm.
also, growing up in different parts of the world and then ending up there,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them were going to go off to university and everywhere, to the States, Canada, to the
Mm-hmm.
UK, to Germany. And I remember that a lot of them were talking about engineering. So that was a big thing, back
Mm-hmm.
then, I guess. And somehow I must have been caught up in all of that because, then I thought, yeah, well, why not engineering? It's as good as anything else to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it could have just as well been something else, languages. I could have ended up in anything. But I think I never excluded engineering because I was a girl.
Yeah. I think that's important too, indeed. But did it sort of, how did you end up in engineering in terms of, you told us I started working at Sony Ericsson, but what happened between that moment, light bulb moment in Ghana, where you thought like, hey, why not engineering? And going to, or stepping into the Ericsson office?
Well, okay, so I got my high school degree.
Yeah.
That was in 82, 83. I was 18 back then. And I've always been a very strong minded person. If
Huh?
I set my mind to do something, I do it. And I decided back then I want to go move to Sweden on my own
Mm-hmm.
and go to the university there.
Mm-hmm.
I did that. I moved away from my family. They were still in Ghana.
How was that?
How was that?
So you end up in Sweden, which
Well,
is vastly different from Ghana, and not only weather-wise.
not only weather-wise, but you also have to remember that I'm half Swedish.
Yeah.
And I did live in Sweden between 77 and 80,
Hmm.
and went to high school there before I finished off in Ghana.
Hmm.
And my sister was actually already living in Sweden. So I wasn't entirely alone. I
Okay.
moved to my sister, and the first 2 years there, actually,
Hmm.
Even though I had a high school diploma, the first thing I had to do was learn Swedish
Yeah.
fluently. Because again, my mom's Swedish, my father's Ethiopian, but we grew up with English. My dad didn't speak any Swedish, my mom didn't speak any Amharic. And so the first year I spent learning Swedish. The second year I spent completing some subjects so that I could qualify for the university in Stockholm.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1985, I was admitted to the technical university in Stockholm, KTH.
Mm-hmm.
Electrical engineering wasn't my first choice. Computer engineering was actually my first choice.
Okay.
And electrical engineering was my second choice. But
And computer engineering at that point was like really young, I think.
it was very young. So it was the first or second year that they had computer engineering at the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm.
Mm-hmm.
So there were only about 50 or 60 spots there.
Yeah.
Whereas electrical engineering, I think it was about 220, 30 spots there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my second choice. So what happened was that I didn't get into computer engineering. I think I was one of the first five on the reserve list.
Mm-hmm.
And I did get into electrical engineering. I started there, and after 2 days, I did get into computer
Yeah.
engineering.
Okay.
But I had already started at electro, as they call it,
Yeah.
at the KTH. And I was just so overwhelmed. It was so fantastic to be a part of everything that was going on at this school that I stayed there. And I don't regret that at all. It was interesting. But I mean, of course, computer engineering has grown since then. But yes, it was
Yeah.
very, very young in 1985.
Yeah. Even on a world scale, I think there
Yeah.
weren't that
Yeah.
many people.
No,
Anyways,
no.
so you end up in electrical engineering,
Yes.
and then you finished that, and then ended up at Sony at Ericsson.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So for 85 till about 90, I was studying. And 91 is when I did my, what do you call it, Afstudierprojekt
Yeah.
at Ericsson. And I stayed there. I think back then, Ericsson was comparable to Philips here in Holland. So I think Ericsson grabbed everybody who came out from university and they started working. If I
They
had
were the really big
exactly, yeah,
name in tech at
they
the
were the
time.
big names. And I think Philips did exactly the same here back then. And of course, in the last 30 years, they've become much smaller and sold off a lot of things. But I mean, if I look at a lot of my friends in Sweden who I still have contact with, a lot of them are still working for Ericsson. So I can imagine that if I had stayed in Sweden and never moved to the Netherlands,
Huh?
I would still be working for Ericsson.
Okay. And
Yeah.
how did you end up in the Netherlands?
I met a Dutch man.
Yeah.
I
So you
met a
moved
Dutch
here for
man.
love.
Exactly. So we met in Sweden, actually, and he moved to Sweden first. We lived there for 6 years. Uh, Oldest two daughters are born in Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
After he was also working in the semiconductor industry. After a while, the semiconductor industry became smaller and smaller in Scandinavia. So he needed to come back to the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
And I packed up everything and I moved to Holland. And the third daughter is born here in the Netherlands.
Okay. So I was wondering, if you look back at your career choice or at the choice of education, if
Mhm.
you look back, knowing what you know right now, would you have taken a different path? So would you have chosen to into computer engineering, or would you still have?
Well, I think again, it's just pure chance. Imagine if I had gotten into computer engineering. I would still be there and I wouldn't know any better. But looking back, I don't think that I would have changed anything. I may not have the greatest affinity for electronics or derivatives or everything that we studied at the university.
Mm-hmm.
But what I tell my kids every so often
Mm-hmm.
is it doesn't really matter what you study as long as you study something that makes you happy, because it's really just a stepping stone
Mm-hmm.
for getting further. And so sometimes that's been a little bit too abstract for my kids to really understand that. But I think that the older they get, they will understand that, it's just one step to get you further in life and in your profession.
Isn't that also part of like becoming older? That you get a different perspective and that you see, can look at your own past. Like, okay, these are apparently, if you're in the process, it's sort of, you're like, okay, why should I do this? But once you finished it, it's like, okay, I needed to do this.
Yeah, but I think maybe
Where,
even that is a bit too early for them to realize
hmm,
that. I think that comes when you've had a couple of jobs and you realize, well, this is everything, all the experience you're building up is just to help you get further.
yeah,
I remember when I used to go to open days with some of my kids,
hmm,
and they would take a look at something that had to do with biology or laboratory education.
hmm,
And I remember one of my kids telling me, I don't want to do that because then you just walk around in a white coat in a boring laboratory,
yeah,
trying to get them to understand, well, that is not the case. It can be the case, but again, it's just a stepping stone to so many opportunities. And that's very
yeah.
difficult to get the young people to understand that.
Yeah. So I suggest we switch gears a bit. I was wondering, your current job is at Nexperia. I have a couple of questions about that. My biggest question is actually, how diverse is the environment there? In terms of, is it just men, and has that changed over the past years?
Yeah, I was thinking about that because I saw it in the lists there. And I think that Nexperia is pretty diverse, but maybe not when it comes to certain departments, certain roles that are very, very technical. And this is probably not something conscious that happens, but it also has to do with what kind of people actually seek those roles.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I take a look, for example, in the design department, then I'm only talking about the Netherlands because it could look very different in other parts of the world, and Nexperia has offices globally. Looking in the design department, I would say that it is pretty male dominated. So it really has to do with when it comes to pure engineering roles, we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of room for improvement. But how do you improve that? I mean, if there are job openings, it already starts there with all the applicants. There aren't too many female applicants for all the engineering roles there.
Yeah. How can we change that?
Yeah. How can we change that? I think maybe it goes way back to how we bring up children. I think there are a lot of things that could influence this picture.
Mm-hmm.
The way we bring up our children, the way we um, maybe make sure that women are given the opportunity to pursue a career and have a family
Mm-hmm.
so that we don't have to make a choice there. Make it easy for them to want to have a career. Schooling, try to already at university level or even at high school level to try to stimulate girls to pursue STEM and engineering roles.
Hmm.
There are a lot of things I think that one can help to improve the.
The pipeline.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, if the pipeline is not balanced to start with, then of course, when people are applying for roles,
Yeah.
there's not going to be any balance there.
No. And then you probably still get at Xperia, probably still get the top applicants, or at least, yeah, that you can get.
Yeah.
So, how do you do this? You talked about upbringing, the importance of upbringing. How do you do? Did you do this? I should say, with your daughters, because you were raised with, let's say, the assumption, okay, there's no, you can choose whatever you want. Is that
Hmm.
something you carried forward to raising your daughters?
I have. I don't have any engineering daughters, just for your information. No, I have. I think the only thing that I've really pushed with my three daughters is make sure you get an education. I have never set any requirements as to what they need to study. They need to figure out what are they good at, and they need to figure out what's going to make them happy. So, that is a little bit my maternal part of me that has pushed them to that. And engineering, I mean, they could have gone into engineering, all three of them,
Hmm.
because they all have high school diplomas from with NT and K, that is more the science diplomas that they
Yeah.
have, but they've all gone in different directions, and I've never really restricted them into going into a certain direction.
I was wondering, does it also have to do with role models? Either friends who go into, because you had people at high school in
Yeah,
Ghana that went into engineering. So you thought, well, why can't I?
yeah.
Do you think that's also important for your daughters, but also because children tend to look around them and see what are my friends doing? And two, more in general, do you think it, if there's more young people choosing engineering, that it makes it more normal for girls as well because they have the role models around them?
Well, there are different kinds of role models. I think, you have active role models and sort of passive role models. And I believe everybody is a role model, everybody around you. And I think for my children, they probably see me as a role model in the sense that they see a very strong minded, independent woman who, when she sets her mind to do something, she does it.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's in engineering or anything else, that's
Hmm.
besides the point. So, you have role models all around you. Then, when it comes to active role models, I mean, role models that have gone down a path or even paved the path where few others have gone before them, those are the role models that I feel are obliged to make themselves visible to help others go down that path. And the more that go down the same path, then that makes it more normal.
I wanted to follow up on that. How do you become a role model?
How
An
do you become
active role model?
active role model? Yeah. So an active role model, you've done something that few others have done,
Hmm.
okay? Then the more visible you make yourself to show that you've done something that few others have done, you've done something that people probably thought were not possible, and you make it easier for others to go down that path. And if these people are not active role models or are not visible to others,
Hmm.
then I think, few will try to follow.
Yeah.
that example. So and I think that LinkedIn is a good platform for that. Your podcast is a really good platform for that.
Thank you.
Showing people, making people aware of paths that people have taken
Hmm.
that might not have been the most natural path that you would have thought of
Hmm.
beforehand,
No.
and makes you think, okay, that path is possible for me too. So I think the more that we do that, the more normal it becomes. Or, yeah, if we're talking about engineering, then try to make it more gender neutral, for
Yeah.
example, that, it's not such a big thing.
Do you encourage people at Nexperia, especially the women around you, to be visible and to really
I
take
do.
up?
Yes.
How do they respond to that?
Well, we do have a number of roll it out role models within Xperia. I think we're six together.
Yeah.
And I'm probably, how should I put it, the most seasoned of them all.
Mm-hmm.
So I see it a little bit as my duty to try and help these girls to become more visible, to take a step outside their comfort zone.
Yeah.
That is not always easy. I mean, I don't.
Especially visibility and telling people what you've achieved as a woman is, at least until recently, was something that a woman wasn't supposed to do. Let me put it that way.
You're right. And I think it's only in the last 5 years personally that I actually can say out loud what I think that I'm good at without sounding like I'm boasting or I'm. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's more recognizing your own talents
Mm-hmm.
and being able to verbalize that.
Yeah.
And that is probably not something that comes naturally to young girls, but probably also young boys. And you need time to be able to develop that talent.
That's for sure. And finding your voice is something that, well, just indeed, to your point, takes a lot of time. You were saying that you found yourself being able to find your voice in the last 5 years. Is that due to the fact that you've just grown older, more mature, more sort of convinced about your qualities, or is that something where also the let's say the environment has changed, that it's more allowing people in general to do that?
So I think it had a lot to do with personal development.
Hmm.
So in 2018, after working in Nijmegen for 16 years, I started working in Eindhoven at the Philips MEMS foundry, and I worked there for 5 years. That is probably where I suddenly got so much room to develop professionally, personally. Let me take it back one step. So, up until 2018, I had always worked in Nijmegen
Hmm.
for a reason, because I had three young kids. 2018, my youngest turned 18, and I got an opportunity then to work in Eindhoven. And after discussing with my daughter if I should take this opportunity, because that would mean I wouldn't be home at 5 o'clock,
Hmm.
make sure that dinner was on the table on time. It would be long days for me. And she said, Mom, of course, take it. This is good for you. So I got that opportunity in Eindhoven, and that those 5 years really, really helped me grow so much. And during those years, so I mean, I don't know if it had to do with just that role that I had in Eindhoven, or the fact that I was a little bit nearing the end of bringing up three small children, and
Uh-huh.
you get a little bit more
Space.
independence back.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you have young kids, they are number one and you do everything for them. And then once they're grown up, then you have time for yourself and you have time to develop yourself. So I think it was a combination of factors that I feel that I grew a lot in those 5 years.
Okay, so it's also mainly about personal growth then, what I'm hearing
Yes.
you say.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you see any changes in has let's say the society become more accepting of diverse, you think, in the last 5 years?
Well, I think that my personal awareness has probably only started in the last 5, 7 years. Again, could be because up until that point, I've been so wrapped up in my personal bubble in raising 3 kids and running a home. So my personal awareness started then a lot in Eindhoven at the high tech campus, which is a bubbling campus, really diverse when it comes to people coming from all over the world working there. It's amazing. It's really, really so refreshing to work there.
Hmm.
And round about the same time, female tech heroes in
Hmm.
Eindhoven
Yeah.
started growing. And I visited them several times when they had seminars and stuff like that. And I started to get really inspired there. It was like, wow, all these amazing women that are
Yeah.
working there. And so, I think that is, in my personal development, in realizing so many women, hearing about their personal struggles or getting to where they have gotten, that sort of triggered something in me that, well, I would like to do something too. I would like to contribute to that,
Uh-huh.
to improve it. And so when I did come back to Nijmegen 2 years ago to
Hmm.
Nexperia, that's when I was thinking, how can we get the same enthusiasm about female role models in Nijmegen? And that's when I got into contact with Roll It Out
Uh-huh.
and decided to join them. And actually, since last month, I've joined their board.
Okay, congratulations.
So I'm really hoping to make a difference there, that we can maybe build up something in the region here
Hmm.
to inspire others, other women.
What do you think is still needed for that?
Continue to be visible. Go out to, go to the schools, talk with people, see what we can do starting there. I know that they have also special programs with elementary schools to try and, connect with the youngsters at all ages, preferably before they make a choice, university choice.
So I'm on a mission to make DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in tech, yeah, a non-issue, obsolete by the end of 2032. What would be your advice to get there?
Change the mindset of everybody.
Well, that's
Mindset,
a big thing.
that's a big thing. It's very big, yes. But mindset that, you can do anything you want.
Hmm.
Our kids can do anything they want that they set their minds to, and that we shouldn't restrict them in any way because they're either a boy or a girl.
Amen to that. So thanks very much for the conversation, Sarah. I really enjoyed it. If people want to learn more about you or maybe find a job at Nexperia, where would you like to send them?
They can always contact me via LinkedIn.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And we'll include that in the show notes. We'll also include a link to the website of Nexperia and, of course, to the site of Roll It Out, where you're now a board member.
Yes.
So,
Great.
so Sara Leggese, thank you very much for this amazing interview. Listeners, thank you very much for listening. And until the next episode, keep being awesome. Well, Well, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to episode 86 of Women Disrupting Tech with Sara Leggese about why you should never exclude opportunities because of your gender. Sarah and I hope that you've enjoyed our conversation as much as we did. And if you'd like to learn more about Sarah, her work at Nexperia, and about Roll It Out, please feel free to connect with her via the links in the show notes. As usual, you can find the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog. On the same website, you can also become a member of the Women Disrupting Tech community. As a member, you get early access to new episodes, and you'll get a handwritten email with the special moments of each of the episodes. Plus, you'll be the first to hear when new blog posts come online, so check out the show notes for a link. When you're looking for a role model to inspire your own hero's journey in tech, I invite you to check out one of the other episodes of this podcast on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And if you're a regular listener, please give the show a rating or a review because that way you help other people discover the podcast. If you're a male ally and you want to help the Women Disrupting Tech make this podcast obsolete by the end of 2032, there's a simple thing you can do. Please share the podcast with friends, family, and co-workers because this way you give my guests a platform they need to make it happen. Finally, if you want to connect with me, you can reach me via dirkjan at womendisruptingtech.blog or you can send me a DM on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, simply type in my name and you'll find me. With that, I wish you a wonderful day. I hope to see you in the next episode, and until then, keep being awesome.